it's been a historic day in New York City as Zohran Mamdani claimed victory in the mayoral election, becoming the first Muslim and youngest person in over a century to lead the city. The 34-year-old has been quick to send a message of defiance to Donald Trump, using his victory speech to slam the president's policies. So let's get more on this with Jared Mondschein, Director of Research at the United States Studies Center. Jared, good to have you back on the program with us. Now, a resounding win, no less, for Mamdani, a different and clearly non-establishment candidate who we know is not quite appreciated by many senior Democrats. What is it about him and his campaign that ultimately found success?
I think there's a lot of analysis of what makes a successful campaign. People look at the demographic shifts, they look at the messaging, they look at the demographics of the candidates themselves. But I think one thing that often gets overlooked is sometimes you just have a really good candidate. And I think there's no denying that Mamdani, or Mayor-elect Mamdani now, is an effective politician in the same way that Barack Obama and Donald Trump were and remain effective politicians. They are good messengers. If you poll anyone in their constituencies what their top messages were, everyone knows them. They know that Barack Obama stood for hope and change. They know that Donald Trump stood for building the wall, and they know that Mamdani stood for affordability. I think more than anything else, yes, he is progressive and he energized young voters, but it really is, I think, the fact that he's an effective and impactful politician that really led to his success today.
Do you believe he did draw out more younger voters who would have otherwise not voted in this election?
Very much so. Just like, again, the two other men I mentioned, Barack Obama and Donald Trump, he brought record level turnout in just not just young voters, but in all New York City voters. So one of the highest turnouts in decades, because actually nearing presidential level turnouts. I think it's because he is such a charismatic and effective politician. And just like Barack Obama and Donald Trump, he brought people to the ballot box because, again, America is a bit different in the way from Australia in the way that it doesn't have compulsory voting. So a lot of times it's not a choice between two candidates. It's a choice between a preferred candidate and the couch. And will those candidates be able to energize their supporters to get off the couch and go to the voting booth on a Tuesday in November? It's not always easy for everyone, but clearly this year, a lot of voters for Mamdani made that choice for him.
Yes, what do you make of the fact that very senior Democrats, including Chuck Schumer, even Barack Obama, did not endorse him? Has this election then perhaps in that way exposed a disconnect between Democrat supporters and the party at large?
Very much so, but I think at the same time you have to keep in mind it's a big tent, just like the Republican Party, as we're seeing the infighting there. It's a big tent as well. And I think more than anything else, the most contentious issue, just like in the Republican Party, is probably the Middle East and foreign policy. And where does Mamdani stand on the Israeli-Palestinian debate? And the fact that Mamdani has been quite outspoken, especially before the last few months where he seems to have gone a bit more quiet on his foreign policy views. He spoke a lot about his views on Palestine, his views on human rights, and his strong opposition to Israeli policy. So I think more than anything else, that is what led to some hesitation from more mainstream Democrats who think that being supportive of someone as polarizing as him on that foreign policy issue is not to their advantage.
Yes, he had lots to say in his speech, a lot of highlights, none more so, I think, than telling Trump to turn up his volume. So what can we expect from his tenure as the mayor of New York?
For some time, the Republicans have often tried to choose, and Democrats as well, but from the Republican perspective, they often try to choose one sort of face of the Democratic Party who will not only be advantageous for them to point to and criticize, but also likely lead to good fundraising. For the longest time, it was Nancy Pelosi. Republicans spoke about Nancy Pelosi practically more than anyone else. She was the Democratic Speaker of the House during the Bush administration, as well as the first Trump administration. Now, I think in many ways, it's Mamdani. He will likely become the face of the Democratic Party, despite the fact that he can't even run for president because he wasn't born in the United States.
Yes, now, talking about Trump, his response was, "And so it begins." How do you think that might materialize?
I think we're going to see a lot more mentions of Mayor-elect Mamdani from the White House, but even Congress. The Speaker of the House, Speaker Johnson, has already come out and talked about the socialist agenda of New York, but of this New York new mayor. But I think ultimately we have to keep in mind that the New York mayor is someone who is appropriately voted for by New Yorkers. And I don't think that that a governor of Alabama or Mississippi is somehow the face of the Republican Party just because they happen to be a deep red state and New York happens to be a largely deep blue state. In many ways, my view, it's horses for courses, and you might have different candidates for different states altogether.
Yes, and overall, though, it was a good night for the Democrats with wins in Virginia as well as New Jersey. How does it bode for, are these encouraging results for the Democrats coming into next year's midterms?
Oh, it's an exceptional night for Democrats. It wasn't just New York or New Jersey or Virginia. It was also California, Prop 50 there, Maine, Pennsylvania. In many ways, the Democrats swept all the major races this year. But we shouldn't forget where we were 4 years ago when President Biden was in the White House, and we saw that Virginia actually elected a Republican governor, a Republican lieutenant governor, Republican attorney general, and the New Jersey governor's race was pretty close to going Republican as well. So I think this is in many ways par for the course, in that the opposing party usually does better after a White House election. But with that said, we also have to look at the fact that when Donald Trump is not on the ballot, Democrats seem to do really well. When he is on the ballot, he overperforms. But when he's not on the ballot and special elections and midterms, the Republicans tend to underperform, and we saw another instance of that today.
Yes, and of course, in the midst of all the excitement and disappointment, depending on which side you are in politics, there is that crippling government shutdown that is poised to become probably the longest in history. Who's been hit hardest, and ultimately who might be seen to be held responsible for this impasse in Congress?
I think more than anything else, it's quite clear that federal employees have been hit the hardest. They're now going without paychecks. But as a result, we're seeing also other impacts from that, including the airports having unbelievable delays because federal employees working at the airport are no longer being paid, and some of them are working without pay if they are working at all, or they're taking a second job. But now we're starting to see the poorest of Americans on food stamps being impacted as well. And we're seeing a lot of Americans across the political spectrum now having to being unclear about where they're going to get their next food, because the SNAP benefits, which help impoverished Americans get food, have basically run out. So, and again, this is not a left or right thing. In a state like West Virginia, which is pretty conservative, pretty Republican, something around 16 to 17% of their population are on food stamps. So this hits a lot of Americans.
Okay, Jared Mondschein, we'll leave it there, but thank you very much for your analysis.
My pleasure.